So welcome to the presentation of the New York Police Department Collision Dashboard that I prepared for the first project of the Maven Bootcamp 2022, which I attended. This dashboard is entirely created using Excel, analyzing the dataset that was given from a CSV file. And we will try to show you as well what has been the thought process behind this. So here we have used Power Query and Power Pivot to slice and dice data and create the tables that I use to provide the graphs. We have the KPIs on the left. Collisions, injured, and deaths are the three metrics that we have been given by the NYPD as metrics to work on to provide insights for the staffing of the officers, plus insights on what we could do to reduce the number of collisions. So the idea has been that of providing global trends and weekly trends. As you can see from this dashboard, we provide both on the left global trends in terms of the monthly trend of the three metrics to provide a better understanding and the seasonal trend of all the three metrics, which is basically identical in the sense that since we see a raise in May until October and the same trend of all of the three metrics, but since deaths are much more smaller in scale, we decided to present collisions and injured by the hundreds instead as deaths by the units. In terms of colors, we also highlighted the February 2022 values. That is because through our research, we found out that this was the deadliest month of February in the last 14 years. So there might be some causes that should be analyzed further. We have reported the source, which is a New York Post topic or article. We have the top 5 street and crossing by danger index. Danger index has been created to weigh differently and properly each metric contribution. In fact, if we want to have a bigger focus on deaths, then we have to weight more this value. Because, for example, we are paying for compensation for deaths that happen in the municipality for wrongdoing, because we didn't check the traffic lights, there was no police officer, the staff, any cause that might be related to the responsibility of the municipality. While if instead we want to only look at the number of police officers and when the collisions happen, we will have to weight more the collisions, because anyway a police officer has to be there on site, take the notes on the accident and the collision and report it to the staff. So we have that the top 5 street and crossing by danger index are represented using with the bar charts showing the composition of each metric, collisions, injured, and deaths, using the same colors to provide for better understanding. And we see that it is quite clear to understand where we have to focus, and that, for example, Grand Central Parkway, even though has a higher contribution in terms of deaths with respect to Long Island Expressway, it's not rated first or second in this case, but it's only rated 4th because the global value of the danger risk makes Long Island Expressway a more dangerous street respect to Grand Central. Of course, this could be changed by a scenario manager but with other conditions, but once the client, in this case the New York Police Department staff and risk management team, has decided which is the scenario that will stay fixed. The central part of the dashboard presents a heat map. This heat map is subdivided by week, day, and the time of the day, which I have grouped in 2 hours zones, since we know that New York police officers have a circa 8-hour shift, and we want to properly staff them so that their shifts will overlap, having more officers when more collision, more injury, or more deaths happen, in order to have properly staffed our people. The heat map is dynamic in the sense that by means of these 2 filters, collisions and borough, I can select different metric and see how these change. While there is not that much of a big change when I select injured or collisions for the heat map, we see that the trend for both collision and injured is basically the same. And the trend in 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and 2 p.m., 4 p.m. is basically the same Monday to Friday, is the time zones where we see most collision happens and most injury happen. We have a totally different story when we focus on deaths. We have that Sunday and Saturday, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. are the deadliest time zones. So we will have to focus as well on these 2 time zones. But if we drill down in borough as well, we can see that the trend is more or less the same for all of the boroughs, but Staten Island, that in terms of trends is the same, but in terms of deaths, we see a totally different story. That might be related because Staten Island has not that much of a nightlife. This could ask us to go deeper into the analysis. While we know from the data that Brooklyn has the highest happening of all of the 3 metrics, basically. The nice thing about these 2 filters is that they also tell us a story, a different story for the top 10 factor. According to the metric, we will have a different evaluation of the factor. So for example, for deaths, we see that unsafe speed is by far the largest factor contributing to this event, while driving inattention and distraction is second, but you can see that it's, thanks to the bar chart, is only probably 1/3 more or less, but we are interested that unsafe speed is by far the first factor contributing to fatal accidents. And driving inattention and distraction is the #1 by far contributing to the collisions, with failure to yield right of way, following too closely. And we can of course explore as well by different boroughs. So let's focus on Staten Island. The first 2 are the same, but for example here we have the third is baking unsafely, which is kind of interesting in terms of collision. Of course, this could be taken to another level by going deeper and deeper in understanding by, for example, opening menus from this bar chart and exploring how many these driving inattention and distraction contributed to injuries and deaths, and so on and so forth. Another interesting thing is that since we have found out this very dangerous situation or critical situation in the February, so past month, according to the data sets we think to be in March 2022, we have highlighted the main contributing factors, the number of collisions and injured, which are shown via data bars, just because we want to see the composition and what is the most contributing factor in this case, not just to give an indication of the volume, not the exact number, while we want to know how many deaths were imputed to each of these contributing factors. In this case, you see that I also have left unspecified, because since this is something that is ringing a bell, we want to also ask officers to investigate more this why we have these 4 casualties with unspecified reason to the collision. Because if there is a trend, for example, a traffic light that is not working, this is very important for our analysis. So we want to go back and look at these incident collision records and explore what is going on. We can see, for example, that driving inattention and distraction and unspecified are the ones that contribute more to collisions, but driving inattention and distraction is the one that contributes more to injured. But of course, all of these factors are only listed for the number of deaths organized largest to smallest in descending order. So we have finally the key takeaways for our audience that are that, as we said, 2 to 4 p.m. and 8 to 10 a.m. see the most collisions. So we have to plan so this will help us plan properly the officers. The organized campaigns promoting safe driving in schools and communities would be a responsibility of the risk management team. And that by far unsafe speed is the #1 cause for deaths, with peaks around 2 and 4 a.m. So let's work around to enforce more rigid rules and penalties for speeding. As said, I'll just go quickly through the analysis that I used. I created metrics, I created different calculated columns for things that I needed. So I used pivot tables to slice and dice the data because it seems much simpler to me. And when I decided that one pivot table was useful to provide insights, I created a separated sheet where I could create my different graphs and the different analysis. So I have a KPI for seasonal sheet for KPIs, where I present the KPI for 2022, the most important KPIs. I can relate the highest collision, the highest deaths, the highest injured, which are obtained by means of a max function. I have the seasonality, where you can see also I'm showing the thought process, which is of course in continuous development until you can find the last or best approach that you decide. This is the scenario manager for the danger index. So of course you can create different scenarios according to your specific quest. The street danger. Here you have all of the different street name, street or crossing if there exists, their rank, and then I can extract the information based on the rank, whether it is a collision, death, or injury that I'm following. The same approach is taken for the crossing or crossing danger risk. We have the contributing factor, which again is evaluated by borrow and type of factor. And again, I'm using, in this case, I'm using quite a nice tool and that I learned while studying Excel, which is dynamic arrays, to properly list the factor based on the metric. So in this case, we are using unique to select the unique list of items. Here you are. So we have the factors that are the unique factors here, the collisions, injured, and deaths, which are the 3 metrics. And in case with this X lookup, I can, and based on this metric, thanks to this formula, I can sort these metrics according to the value that is presented here, which is the filter that we have in the dashboard. This will sort automatically all of my table, and then this XLOOKUP function will fetch the exact data and the value so that they can display on my bar chart. And this is the latitude and longitude values. I found the max and mean of the latitude and longitude for each borough that was present in the dataset, and then I used a switch through function in the calculated column to impute all of the missing boroughs. This was basically the analysis that I followed, and this is step that will take the analysis a little bit farther by examining as well motorists, pedestrians and cyclists. Hope you enjoyed the show, and if you want to, feel free to leave me a comment.